I would genuinely say that about 80% of every single person that I see with like £1 million invested or in their pensions never look like they would end up there if you looked at their finances when they were like 40. You see, there's this story that most people tell themselves about money, and it goes something like this. The people who end up wealthy figured it out in their 20s. They started young, they were disciplined early, and by the time they hit 40, they were already set. And if you didn't do that, if you just spent your 30s keeping your head above water, then you've missed the window. You're behind. And now you're playing catch up on a game that is basically already over. I want to completely dismantle that story because the data and my observations do not back that up. The majority of serious, lasting wealth isn't built in your 20s and early 30s. It's built between that golden zone, between 40 and 60. Not as a consolidation prize for late starters, not as a slow, grinding recovery for people who've made mistakes. As the primary event, the golden zone, the decade where maths finally actually starts working in your favor, often for the first time. See, there are three forces that make all of this true. Peak salary, stable costs, and making every pound you have work to its full capacity. And by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly how each one of those works and why your 40s aren't the end of the story. They might just be the beginning of the most important chapter. So what I want to do is tell you a story to start this all off. There was this guy that I worked with who came to me, and he was in his like early 40s, had a pretty decent salary, was doing really well for himself, but pretty much had literally nothing saved, or just little bits of regular pension and stuff saved. And he was genuinely convinced that he'd missed it. He'd missed the boat. He wasn't just like casually pessimistic. He was properly panicked. He had spent his 30s dealing with what most people deal with in their 30s, right? Mortgage, young kids, a period of financial change and chaos. And now, at that time, he was like sitting across from me asking whether there was any realistic point in even starting. So here's what I told him. In your 20s, there are three things that are working against you simultaneously, okay? Your salary is low, your costs are unpredictable, you don't know where you'll be living, whether you'll be having kids, what emergencies will land, and because of both of those things, the actual amount of money that you can actually invest consistently and regularly is often pretty small. The maths just genuinely doesn't favor that position yet. It's not an excuse, it's just genuine maths. But by your 40s, that picture has often changed in every direction. Most people hit their highest lifetime income somewhere between 40 and say 55, 60. The salary engine finally has enough kind of like real fuel in it. At the same time, the financial chaos and uncertainty of your 20s and sort of early 30s starts to settle down, right? The mortgage is known, maybe the kids are a little bit older. The unpredictable costs that used to kind of swallow your surplus income have largely stabilized. And for the first time, you have pretty much consistent, predictable money left over at the end of every month. Now, everybody will point to a beautiful compound growth chart that shows a beautifully elegant upward curve that will demonstrate that more time equals more compound growth. But here's the part that nobody talks about enough. Compounding, that beautiful chart that you've already seen, it isn't just about time. It's about the size of what you're actually putting in. Let me show you exactly what I mean with real numbers, because this is the part that I would say genuinely surprises people, right? Let's take a 25-year-old who starts investing £100 a month and keeps going until their age 60. 35 years of discipline and starting pretty young, doing everything right. Let's say they get an annual return of 7%. They will end up with £180,000. They put in £42,000 of their own money over that time, and the market did the rest. Now, let's take a 40-year-old who starts with £1,000 a month and invests until age 60, 20 years, okay, half the time. Let's say they get the same 7% return, they will end up with £520,000. That is nearly, 3 times more? Despite starting 15 years later. Look, the 25-year-old had time on their side, but the 40-year-old had contribution size, and contribution size almost always wins. Now, obviously, this is a little bit of an oversimplification, okay? Because obviously we're going to say, look, the 25-year-old might change their contribution levels, etc., and I get that. But I hope you get the point here. Compounding normally gets all of the credit. And yes, look, time absolutely matters. But what actually does the heavy lifting with investments and growing and building wealth is the size of what you're putting in, the ammunition, the fuel that you're giving that engine. A 40-year-old with a real salary and stable costs has genuine surplus that they finally have. They have the fuel to make that engine run as fast as possible. The 25-year-old putting in £100 a month because that's often genuinely all they can manage. And there's no shame in that, by the way. That is amazing. It just doesn't keep up. There's no shame in it. It's just maths and how it all works. So that guy who came to me, who was like super panicked, he wasn't late at all. He just arrived at the starting line, and the starting line is exactly where he needed to be at that moment in time. Now, obviously, if you're starting a little bit later, say at 40, and you've not really got a lot saved up and you're playing catch up to a certain degree, you have to acknowledge that, right? There's no denying that you're potentially a little bit behind someone that maybe really squeezed the pedal when they're a bit younger. Now, one of the things that is the biggest blockers to building wealth in general is the amount of what I call tax friction there is between what you're paid and what you keep. So your gross salary and what actually lands in the bank. So now starting late means that you have to explore every single possibility to reduce that tax friction, right, between what you make and what you keep, because that's such a drag on your wealth building performance. Now, the single greatest weapon that you have in the fight against this is a pension. Super boring, I know, but it is genuinely the biggest wealth building engine that you have, okay? So let's talk about pensions, because if you're in your 40s and you're not using your pension aggressively, you are genuinely leaving a significant amount of money on the table every single month. Here is possibly the most important part of all of this, okay? It's a psychological shift that actually you need to get your head around first. When you are 25, contributing money to a pension feels like sending money to another dimension, doesn't it? You can't touch that money until you're 57. That, for an early for someone that's 25, is 30 years away. That might as well be a different lifetime, right? So most people in their 20s, what do? They contribute the minimum, if anything, and focus on things that feel a bit more real and immediate. I get that. That makes total sense to me. It's really difficult trying to convince a 20-year-old to make significant pension contributions. But at 45, that equation has changed absolutely completely. 57 is only 12 years away. That is actually closer to the 2008 financial crisis than where we are to that now. That's not an abstract anymore. It's tangible. You're nearly there. And that should change how you think about locking away money. Honestly, when we're speaking to people about this, the first thing that I always have in my own head when I'm speaking to people about, starting a little bit later, if you're 50 onwards, the question should always be, why am I not using a pension? Forget sort of making a justification to actually use the pension. My first port of call when I'm speaking to anyone that is over the age of 40, 50 in that zone is like, hey, you need to be focusing every single pound on that pension, because you're basically nearly there, like I said. Now, the mechanisms of all of that, let's talk about tax relief. Okay, so that's how we're going to minimize this friction between what you earn and what you keep. This is where it gets genuinely powerful. When you contribute to a pension, you're investing that money pre-tax. So this is how we close that gap. You earn £1, then you basically get to invest £1. Okay, HMRC either doesn't tax you, or if you're self-employed or you're doing it from what's called your net pay after you've been paid, then you make contributions via net pay. HMRC tops it up. So for a basic rate taxpayer, let's say you put £100 into your pension, that gets automatically topped up to £100. And if you're doing that from your workplace, if you move £100 of your income into your workplace pension, that's only costing you £80 out of your pocket. And that is for basic rate taxpayers. It gets way, way more attractive for higher rate taxpayers. For higher rate taxpayers, the maths is exponentially even better. Every £1,000 you contribute effectively only costs you £600 out of your take-home pay. The government either doesn't take or hands you back £400 of your own money. There is almost no other legal mechanism that gives you that immediate 67% return on your money before anything happens at all. If you extrapolate that out to also like additional rate taxpayers, the numbers are just a no-brainer. So the key thing here is that you're getting closer to the pension age of accessibility. So that means the equation of, well, the tax is nice, but I can't touch it for ages, that is gone. Okay. Now, there is a limit to how much you can put in your pension. The annual allowance right now sits at £60,000. That's how much you can put into your pension each year. Just be wary here that you can only contribute to a pension up to 100% of your UK relevant income. That is just a kind of jazzy way of saying your salary, essentially. So it's either 100% of your UK relevant salary or your salary, or £60,000 annual allowance. So if you earn £40,000, the most you can put into your pension each year would be £40,000. Now, for the vast majority of people in their 40s, they're not contributing anywhere near that, which means that there is meaningful headroom to make serious catch-up contributions. Now, if you've had years where you've earned really, really well, but didn't contribute that much to a pension, there is also carry forward relief. You can bring unused allowance from the previous 3 tax years into the current year and contribute a lump sum. And most people do not even realize that's possible, right? So let's say, for example, you still have to factor in that 100% UK relevant income rule, but it can be really powerful because if you're earning 100,000 and let's say you inherited £100,000 into your bank account or something, in theory, by using carry forward, you could scrape that all back and effectively lump that whole full 100,000 into a pension, just in theory. Okay. Well, you'd have to do the net position, but you get the point. Now, HMRC, what that really means is that HMRC, in a really rare act of apparent generosity, they've built a system that rewards you more the higher you earn and the later you use it, which is almost exactly a position a deliberate 45-year-old finds themselves in. The system is tilted in your favor if you're starting a little bit later. The question is whether you're going to notice it and whether you're going to do something about it. But let's be honest about this situation, okay? If you are starting seriously in your 40s, someone who began investing at 25 has a genuine head start. That is just true, okay? We can't rewind the clock. And pretending that gap doesn't exist doesn't help anyone. The contributions matter, but that gap exists. But here is what most people miss. You can absolutely close that gap. We've already talked about the contributions and the reduction of the tax friction. But this is where you can close it even further. Now, not by taking reckless risks, not by chasing high return Ponzi schemes, but by making sure that every single pound you have is working to its full capacity. Because again, the uncomfortable truth is, for most people in their 40s, it isn't. Their money just isn't doing that. After years, absolutely years, and I've seen so many people in this situation of financial pressure, right? Mortgages, childcare, job uncertainty, unexpected bills. Cash savings feel like the safe and responsible move. And there's a sort of real psychological reward to it, right? You've scraped and sort of scrimped and scraped for years. And now there's finally a meaningful number sitting in that account. It feels solid. It feels earned. And then the idea of putting that anywhere near any form of risk or a market that goes up and down feels like gambling with something that, frankly, you've worked really hard to build. But that feeling of safety is the one thing that is costing you that ability to catch up. Here's the maths that matters. Inflation runs, broadly speaking, at around 3% a year over the average long-term period of time. At that rate, £100,000 sitting in a savings account would lose roughly £30,000 in real purchasing power over 10 years. Now, that's not some dramatic cash. That money's still going to be sitting there. It's still going to be £100,000. It's not some bizarre mistake that you've made. It's just quietly, steadily being eroded in terms of real power while the number on your screen stays reassuringly still. But your money is not standing still. It's going backwards to the tune of £30,000 over 10 years. Meanwhile, the person who started at 25, their money's been in the market for 2 decades, compounding, growing, recovering from downturns and like pushing on even further. Every year you keep your money in cash instead of invested is another year that you're widening that gap that you're trying to close. So what does that actually mean in practice? It's this. Any money that you have that you can genuinely put away for, let's say, 5 years or more should be working harder than in a savings account, okay? That is the clear line in the sand. Under 5 years, okay, cash is fine, cash is sensible, there's nothing going to go wrong there. But over 5 years and above, you really, really should be looking to invest it because that's when that pendulum starts to swing on when inflation really starts to bite, okay? Now, I want to be clear about something as well because you might be thinking, I'm not really sure about this, so I don't want to take a lot of risk and so on and so forth. What I'm saying here is this doesn't mean that you have to leap straight from the safety of cash into the full volatility of the stock market. It is not the only option, right? I am so sick of seeing on this platform people saying, oh, you've got to invest your money. And the way that you invest your money is in the global stock market. That's not true. There are areas between the stock market, which is at the top end of the risk and volatility spectrum, and cash, okay? So you don't have to go from here to here. You can go somewhere in between. The stock market is not the only option. And for lots and lots of people, I would argue 9 out of 10 of you watching this, it's not the right one either. Look, the stock market is where all of the long-term returns have historically come from, right? Everybody knows that. That part is well established. But it can be absolutely brutal. It's a brutal ride on the way there. So on a spreadsheet, you'd say, well, yeah, of course, I would rather go for something that's given me 10% a year over the last 50 years. But you've got to live through what it means to actually achieve those returns. In some of the worst drawdowns in the markets, 2008, COVID, all that sort of stuff, your money might have dropped by up to 30 to 50%. Now, if you're not prepared for that psychologically, you'll panic, won't you? You'll sell at the bottom and you'll do more damage than if you just stayed in cash. So yes, what I'm saying is you need to potentially take a little bit more risk with your money to make it work harder. But that really, really, really doesn't mean chucking everything that you have into 100% global equities and just hoping for the best, okay? Really try and dismantle that misnomer in your mind. I see it everywhere on this platform. There is a gap between cash and the global stock market. Okay, you don't need to be one or the other. Now, what I always do in this situation and talking about this whole thing is I always point towards what's called a multi-asset fund. So a fund, again, is just money that you put into that is invested. The concept is pretty straightforward. Instead of being entirely in the stock market, your money is spread across different types of asset, right? Different things, primarily equities and bonds, okay? Bonds are when you loan money to companies and governments. And in particular, they act as a dampener, as a volatility reducer to the stock market. When the stock markets fall sharply, bonds tend to hold a bit steadier. Okay, so they're a bit more steady eddy than the stock market, which if you have a blend, it smooths out the ride. So let's say, for example, if you're in 50% equities and 50% bonds, yes, you are going to give up some of that long-term growth number that you see on that spreadsheet. And if you have all of your money in equities, if you have it in 50% bonds, 50% equities, you're theoretically going to get less return over time, but you'll sleep a lot better on the way when things get choppy. And you'll do the thing that I think is the single biggest indicator of investment success: stay the course. Okay, it doesn't matter about I'm giving up some returns over a 20-year time horizon if you just sell at the bottom when you panic because the stock market is dropping. Now, I am a big fan of the Vanguard Life Strategy range. Okay, if you've watched any of my videos before, I think they're a brilliant, elegant solution, multi-asset fund that you can tailor towards your level of risk. The key, of course, is finding the right level of balance of risk and reward for you. So as I said, there's this range of funds called the Vanguard Life Strategy range. Not sponsored by Vanguard. There are other multi-asset funds out there. It's just that, generally speaking, they've been around for the longest. They're some of the best and they work really, really well. Now, they run from 20% equity exposure. So your portfolio, the fund only has 20% allocation to the bumpy stock market, all the way up to 100% equity. That would be akin with that global stock market. And you can see that they've got every level in between. So all you need to do is, for whatever money you can leave for a longer than a 5-year window, pick a risk level that matches your temperament and your timeline and just stay with it. Simple, low cost, genuinely effective. And you can just sleep at night knowing that your money is invested in the right place for you. If you're not sure where you're going to sit on this scale, I've actually put together a risk tool, which is a quick questionnaire that will help you to essentially work out what level of equity exposure might be right for you. Again, this is all do your own research, make sure everything's right for you. There's a link in the description below for the risk tool. I'll flash it up on screen now so you can have a look at what it broadly does. Quick 9 or 10 question questionnaire. Then you marry it up to your timeline, and then effectively it will give you an indication as to what level of equity risk you may wish to take. But again, do your own research. Now, if you've already gone past this stage and you know all about Vanguard Life Strategy, maybe you're already using index funds, something like that, and you want to go a little bit further, you should maybe check out Beyond the Market. It's where I share the exact investment portfolio that I use with my high net worth clients. And it works as a direct mirror of the Vanguard Life Strategy funds. So same principle. You pick your risk level from 20 all the way up to 100%, and you get access to a specific portfolio construction that I use beyond just standard index funds. Again, links in the description below if you want to check it out. So that is primarily the catch-up mechanism. It's not a shortcut. It's not a scheme. It's making sure that the pounds that you're now earning at peak salary are keeping and kept through tax efficiency and are actually deployed, working at full capacity every single month in assets that grow. Because genuinely, at this point, you cannot afford for any of it to sit idle. The person who started at 25 has time on their side. You, my friend, have size and discipline on yours, and only if the money is actually working for you. Your 40s are not some consolidation prize. They are the first decade where the maths genuinely, consistently worked in your favor, where the salary is there, the costs have stabilized, and the tax system is actively rewarding you for using it properly. The people who build serious wealth in their 40s and 50s, they're not financial geniuses, right? They're not people who got lucky. They're people who understand that the window was open and they just chose to walk through it. Now, all of that is very well. And it's what we've done is we've pretty much focused on catching up and trying to build wealth as much as humanly possible by keeping more of what you earn, reducing tax friction, and making your money work as hard for you as it can. But the reality is, at some point, you need to know where the finish line is. And actually, more important, where it makes zero logical sense to keep funneling money into things like pensions, which is why you should watch this video here next, because I'm going to show you the exact point where saving and investing becomes absolutely pointless. And you should focus more on the thing that you have the most of, time and enjoying today. So give it a click and I'll see you there.